Sometimes a painting can be deceptive. Limited on size, this painting, If, by George Morland, opens up quite the story. Many artists aspire to live a certain extravagant lifestyle, if you think about Caravaggio, Picasso or Dali. Well, it seems that George Morland, born in the 18th century, outstripped them all for his love of life and his prodigious talent for painting and hard drinking. His early talent was carefully cultivated by his father with a view to profit from it, shutting up young George in a garret to make drawings from pictures and casts for which he would make the sale and keep the money. George, on the other hand, is said to have soon found a way to make money for himself by hiding some of his drawings and lowering them at nightfall out of his window to young accomplices, with whom he used to spend the proceeds in frolic and self-indulgence. So, as you can see, this painting has got some history attached to it. It's extremely dirty. It's got a very discoloured varnish on there. There is a lot of craquelure, whether that's in the varnish or the paint layer. I'm suspecting the paint layer. It looks quite thick in parts, but overall there is lots of detail that you can see through that varnish as well, so that's encouraging. On the back, this panel has the chamfered edges, which probably puts it in around 18th century, but it has been prepared with canvas on the back, and this is a strip that's been torn off it, so unless there was a crack or it was weakened and this was applied to the back to strengthen it, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to be leaving that in place on this painting. I don't see the point of putting it under undue stress to remove that and see what's underneath. But the first thing I will do is apply some UV light and see if there's any historical retouching. So a painting this age will no doubt have work being done, and you can see there on his coat and jacket it looks a bit darker straight away. Some dark areas in the trees, which means fresh paint. I'm not sure what all those little black marks are there, if that's an old varnish that's under this varnish layer, but the sky looks pretty intact with minimal, if any, retouching. There is some on the cow there at the bottom, and on his shoulder you can see that brown patch there, and the jacket and back of the horse as well looks like it's had some work done in the past, so that's something to be aware of when we start the clean. So my first port of call will be to see if there is any surface dirt on the painting, and then I will look to see what will remove the varnish layer as well. So the first is an aqueous solution. This will tell me if there's any nicotine staining or smoke or dirt on there. So this is my first test. So I'm going to do this in the rebate area, which is like the top 5mm that's hidden by the frame, and I'm just going to see if anything comes off with this solution. I'm not too hopeful though. You can tell straight away that there is very little, if anything at all, on that surface, so it may well have been wiped down fairly recently, perhaps before it was put into auction. It could have been cleaned off a little bit on the top. And then the next one is a solvent solution, and this will determine if the varnish can be removed. So what I'm hoping to see is, there you go, is a yellowed discoloration of that swab, which means the solvent is melting the varnish layer and removing it. So you can see that amber colour there coming off, and you'll see the blue tones or the lighter blue tones of the sky start coming through. I'm also interested to see if that craquelure is holding dirt or if it is a crack in the painting as well. So at the moment it seems to be holding dirt, which is encouraging as well. So with my tests complete and I know which mixture I'm going to be working with, I'm going to start the clean process here. And I'm going to show you as much as possible in real time as I can. This seems like a good idea. It's only a small painting, so hopefully you'll be able to just see or get an idea of what's involved when you actually start cleaning a painting. So I've got my cotton wool, and I'm going to separate this up now into a number of swabs ready to go. So I usually split it in half, then pull off some pieces, as you can see, about 2 inches by 1 inch. I don't have to be dead precise because the craft or the skill is in the roll. So I get my swab stick, which is a modified paintbrush, which I've had for many years, and then I roll the swab. So some days you have a good swab day, some days not so good. That's pretty good, quite happy with that. And then into the solution, and then I kind of squeeze it on the side so I don't have an excess of solution on that swab. And I'm going to start in that top corner there as well. So you can see straight away it's biting through that discoloured varnish and beginning to remove it. If it removes too easily, I may well dilute the solution a little bit. If I'm confident that it's just removing the varnish and nothing else, I'll continue. This seems to be just removing the varnish. It's a consistent colour and there's no pigment tone coming off, even when you're close to the top of those trees as well. So I'm confident that this solution is the correct one. But I'm just going to check what's happening on the surface. So I'm just going to use this magnifying loupe, and you can see there that we've removed that discoloured varnish and we can see the crackler of the paint surface underneath. So with that in mind, I can then continue across the rest of the painting. So the blue tones and the white tones are the strongest compared to your browns and your earth pigments. So I'm going to clean the sky first, and this will give me the confidence and the knowledge required for the rest of the painting. So you get a feel for how the varnish is melting, how much pull there is on your swab, and you know that you're just removing the varnish and not taking anything else off that shouldn't be coming away. So you can see here now as I come down, that varnish is consistently, it's like a brown umber or a raw umber colour. But that crackler is so heavy, so I'm imagining the paint layer underneath there is quite thick. But the problem with that is it does grab and hold varnish layers when you're cleaning. So this painting will have been cleaned in the past. It's probably the best part of maybe 250 years old or 230 years old maybe. George Morland was active around 1784 or 1785. So I'm just going to have another check here, just make sure I'm happy with what's happening. There does seem to be a little bits of a darker varnish still present that you can see here. Now, whether I need to increase the strength of my solution or not, but I think in the first instance I'm just going to concentrate on this kind of raw umber varnish layer, and then perhaps we can tackle whatever's left behind. It might be a more stronger damar varnish that someone's cleaned but not fully in the past. So we will come to that as we come to it. I'm just going to carry on cleaning this. So we're kind of thinking this might be an English pastoral scene. That building in the background, I don't know, it looks a little bit continental to me. I'm not sure. It looks like it might have an arch and a bell in there in the distance. It doesn't particularly look like a stately home or anything too traditionally English. So that's what's throwing me at the moment in terms of where this painting could be from. But we'll delve into that a little bit later, a little bit further down the line. So after Morland fell out with his father, he struck out on his own and he went to work with an art dealer. But again, he just became a slave to this dealer who would sell all his works and just trickle the money to him. And he commenced his life which I think, as John Hassell, his biographer, said, in its combination of hard work and hard drinking is almost without parallel. So he has a reputation, he's quite prodigious, he's producing a lot of paintings, he is making money. People are making money off the back of him, and anything that he has, he is spending on drink and an indulgent lifestyle. It seems his companions were ostlers, I'm not sure what that is, pot boys, again, not sure what that is, horse jockeys, moneylenders, pawnbrokers, punks and pugilists. So he is mixing with a certain crowd, and in this company the handsome young artist swaggers about, dressed in a green coat with large yellow buttons, leather breeches and high-top boots. So he obviously quite fancies himself. He's making good money, he's swaggering around and enjoying himself, spending all his money on his friends, I imagine, and drinking. So probably in today's equivalent, he'd have been driving around in a Lamborghini, being a bit of a influencer on Instagram. But back in the day there, he was just spending it in inns and taverns. So he became a bit of a slave to this dealer, and then he eventually made a successful effort to free himself, and he escaped to Margate, where he painted miniatures for a while. And then from there he paid a short visit to France, where his fame had preceded him, and he had no lack of commissions. So he was on the continent, so perhaps if this is a Morland, this could be something from the continent that he's done and brought back with him. Again, not quite sure. But I'm loving the sky in this, the colours, the blue azure at the background there of those hills, and then that cobalt blue at the top left corner. So whoever the artist is, I'm hoping it is Morland, he certainly knew what he was doing, and even on such a small painting, this being about 20 centimetres square, there's plenty of detail in there and there's plenty going on. So at this stage here, if you look at the swabs that are collecting on the right hand side now, you can see that they're all of a consistent colour. This is the colour of the discoloured varnish, and there's nothing that has removed from that paint surface in terms of pigment or any historical retouchings. So that's good to see. I do think this painting is fairly original. As we saw in the UV light, though, it looks like the gentleman on the horse, his jacket has been overpainted, as well as the back of the horse, and then in the shoulder of that cow as well there's been some work. So as I come down into the painting now, I'm going to just tread carefully around those areas, and I'm going to be checking my swab as well, because sometimes historical retouchings don't show up in the UV light, so you just have to be careful and vigilant as you're cleaning. So I'm moving over to a smaller swab, and I'm going to have a look now and see what starts happening over here. So very tentative. That looks like a slightly warmer colour straight away. So that might be some of the retouching coming off his jacket. Let's keep moving. It's quite sticky. It is quite thick here. And again, I'm expecting around that cow's shoulder some retouching to remove as well as we go along. This fountain will be fairly solid. It'll have white in there, flake white, and it looks like it's got a bit of blue and some greys as well, so that'll be quite a strong area to clean. I'll also be careful around those foliages as well. So pigments like sap green, again quite soft pigments, quite easily removed if you're not careful. Yeah, it's quite thick, the varnish in this section. You can see my swab trails over the fountain. But I like this composition. It's deceptively simple, but there is actually quite a lot going on with these two animals and the figure and the fountain. There's a bit of movement there, and then the distance and the building, and there's that little person walking down the lane as well. So these genre paintings would have been popular at the time, and you can just see there again that jacket if you look at the gentleman's shoulder, you can see the lightness of that historical retouching and then the strength of his jacket underneath. So I think that's been added at some point afterwards. Maybe someone wanted the figure to stand out a little bit more. Right, we're going to have a look at this cow now. Again, I'm just being very general in my approach here. Seeing if I can just remove the varnish, and what reveals that figure is very thinly painted, that's just edging off into the distance. And this bottom area of the composition is pretty much all browns. So again, there you can see there, just off that cow, the tones darken quite a bit. So there is retouching coming off that animal now. So I'm going to stop there and just assess. So that's the retouching that I'm talking about and I'm aware of. So again, I'll probably just weaken my solution over there and then just make sure that what is cleaning is the retouching and nothing else. So the reason you can be confident that that's what's removing is your solution stays the same across the whole painting. So if I clean the back of the cow, nothing removes. It just has the same kind of umber colour as the varnish from the sky, but that same solution removing pigment from the front end of the cow again just suggests that that is fresher pigment or newer retouching. So that's how you can be confident that you're removing something that's unoriginal. And of course the UV light helps you in that as well when you do your initial assessment. But those trees are nicely tackled in the background, the foliage, the way the leaves have done, I really like the way they've been tackled. And there's some nice highlights coming through there as well, so that's a real nice section of painting too. I still think there's more of that jacket to come off that still doesn't look quite original, so I'll be assessing that as we go along. So with the majority of that varnish removed now, I'm just going to have a look at the sky and see what I can do with those small remnants there. Now I'm not sure if it's dirt, it can be dirt, so sometimes varnish is applied in layers that trap dirt in, so this is my kind of, if you like, dirty, smoky, grimy cleaning solution. And I'm just going to see if all them little small pepper marks are dirt or if it's something else. So straight away I can tell with, see, that's just took a little bit more of that retouching off his jacket there, that line. But this is not, it's not touching that, so it can't be dirt. It must be a old and discoloured varnish that's settled in some of that crackle. So let's have a closer look. And you can see here now we've got the thick crackle which is dark, almost black, and then we've got some fainter lines like this little section here. So I think this is a very, very old varnish that has been partially cleaned, but it has gathered in some of those paint fissures and areas of crackle. So you can see here, I'm just checking that that is on the paint surface with this scalpel, and you can see that it is. It's just sat on top of there. So I'm going to try some different cleaning solutions now. So this is a conservation soap with a little bit of solvent in, and I'm going to see if this will, with a little bit of abrasion, tackle that and remove it. Again, it doesn't seem to be having an awful lot. This is a different solvent solution. Again, doesn't seem to be budging things too much. And then my third try is a different solvent, and that seems to be lifting it a little bit and pushing it a little bit further into the background. So I'm going to continue with that. I don't think I'm going to be able to remove all of it, but what I might be able to do is reduce that visible. So you can see there it's kind of pushed it back a lot without putting that paint surface under too much stress. So I will continue with that. And then I'm just applying a neutral solvent now just to stop any cleaning processes that I have been working on, and this will just stop any reactions that are happening on that painting. But it also gives you an idea of what it will look like when it's varnished. So I still think there's historical retouching that's shiny on the cow and a little bit on the gentleman. Sky looks good. It's quite matte now. That means all the varnish is removed. And some of those pepper pot old varnish marks have been pushed back. But there's still areas of his jacket and the shoulder of that cowl that I'd like to address further. But he's looking a lot brighter and a lot cleaner. Let me show you a little bit more about George. So here we have a portrait of George Morland, painted by his father. You can see him there in the right hand side, looking fairly dapper. He looks like he's still under tutelage there, so maybe not too wild. And here's a selection of his paintings that are in public collections in the UK. Now, there's a few similarities in composition that I'd like to draw your attention to. So in our little portrait, we've got all the actions in the right hand side. So from the top right corner to the left, like a diagonal line, and that's where all the action is, much like this painting here. So this draws your eye into that bottom corner. So a little bit of something that's kind of similar to a few of his works. And then the other thing that I've been looking at, I did a Google search and I got a lot of Dutch paintings that came up, these pastoral scenes with cattle and horses and sheep. This one was quite interesting. It had a similar fountain to the one in our painting. So we've got the cattle coming up to draw some water. So I had a bit of a Google, found some pictures of 18th century cattle fountains and water fountains. I don't know an awful lot about this, but this one again looks quite similar to the fountain that's in our picture. So I'm back to just looking at that overpaint on the jacket, and it looks like someone at some point repainted that jacket over the top of an original black jacket. Maybe they did this just to lift that character a little bit out of the depths of the painting and that shadow. I've also been working on those kind of pepper pot old Damar varnish markings, but I don't want to over clean and that crackler to stand out any further. So I think if I was to aggressively clean this painting more, I run the risk of taking off all those peaks of that crackler. So I'm going to stop at that point, and then I can touch in those marks that are a little bit more pronounced. So I'm going to add my barrier varnish now to this painting. This is a hydrocarbon varnish. It's got really good light fast properties, and I'm just going to do a barrier varnish now. I'm happy with where the painting's at. I feel like this is the ground zero, should we say, where it's back to as much original as possible with any historical retouchings taken off and that the dirty varnish removed. And as I say, I don't want to clean any further and run the risk of damaging that paint surface. So a lot of those tiny little marks will stay. And, you know, it's just the painting showing its age. So the frame that came with this painting is a reproduction. It's probably early 20th century to mid. It's quite nice. It's a swept frame. It's got these decorative corners. The finish is a little bit dull, so I've chatted with the client and we're just going to give it a little bit of a lift with some gilt cream. So this is bronzing powders mixed with wax, and it'll just brush over like a dry brush. So I don't put a lot on my brush. I rub some off and then just kind of gently highlight all those nice decorative areas, and it'll just give the frame an overall lift and brighten it up a little bit. So that's all I'm going to do with the frame. There's no losses, there's no chips or damage, so that's just to freshen that up a little bit before the picture goes back in. And then I'm going to do some retouching. The barrier varnish that I applied has dried, and I'm going to use my pigment chips now to retouch in those areas of losses and push back a little bit of that crackler in the sky. So these are all raw pigments. They're all held in a conservation resin, and it has a certain solvent that softens that resin and gives me enough time to mix the colours before it dries. Now it dries really quickly, probably touch dry within, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute, and then in 4 or 5 minutes, it's pretty much completely dry, and then it cures completely. So you have to work quick with these pigments. I have already done a little bit of mixing at the top just to get some colour tones ready to go that I can dip into. And then I'm just going to mix and adjust, and then I'll offer it up to the painting to see how close we are. If we are just slightly out, I can always just readjust that and add a little bit more tone to it. Sometimes you mix a colour and you get it right first time. Sometimes there's a little bit of adjustment, and then again when it dries it changes a little bit as well. So you have to do this a lot by feel, and just all I'm doing is the tiniest little pinprick of pigment just to push those cracks back. I just don't want them to detract from the painting. So a lot of times I get asked, do I retouching everything? And the answer is usually no. This is the painting showing its age. If I feel that it's detracting and spoiling your enjoyment of the picture, then I will touch in the worst of them, you know, like these big thick black ones. Your eye kind of gets drawn to them. So by retouching in, I'm just balancing those out so that when you look at the painting from viewing distance, you can enjoy it for what it is rather than focusing on all that crackler. So again, lots and lots of tiny little dots and lines just to push the majority of that back, and you can start to appreciate the tones in that painting now, the warmness of that sky. And again with this area here, just pushing the worst and the thickest of those lines back just to get a more balanced approach. And then I'm going to also put back in some of that historical retouching on the cow, so just matching some of those tones there and just bringing those in, not doing an awful lot on there really, just to give it a more solid appearance. And the same with his jacket. So I believe his jacket was originally black. He certainly looks a lot smarter. He looks more well-to-do if he's taking that cow to market on his horse. He's put his best jacket on, I'm not sure. I think those brown tones are the collar of the jacket. So I think this is more original than the overpaint that was on there previously. I think somebody might have just got a bit carried away or acted under the owner's discretion to add that in. So for all intents and purposes now, I'm going to leave that, and then I'm going to apply a top coat of varnish. So I'm just going to pack these away, and my top coat of varnish is a different varnish. It's got a different makeup, and it's got a little bit more of a gloss finish than the barrier varnish, so this will add a lot of richness to the painting and allow those colours to really shine through. It's also important that the varnish you use does not interfere with the retouching. So the retouching pigments abound in one resin, and this varnish is made up of another. So if there were similar solvencies, you run the risk of brushing all your restoration away. Right, while that's drying, I'm going to get the frame ready to fit it up. These are my fixtures and fixing boxes. They contain pins, my bradawl, some labels, lots of different screws, hangers, offsets, and more offsets in here. It does look kind of messy, but there is some sort of system there. But before I attach any of those, I want to put a protective insulation foam tape on the inside. When I'm using panels, there's a bit less give in a panel as opposed to a canvas. So when I frame up or fit up a panel, I like to use this, and it's a self-adhesive foam kind of conservation tape. It's probably about 1 millimetre or thick, maybe a little bit more, and you lay this into the rebate of the frame, and it just gives the board a little bit of cushioning when you fasten it in. So while I'm doing that, I will tell you a little bit more about George Morland. So he was very successful. He managed to leave his taskmaster of a dealer and escape to France for a while, where he did some commissions. he was really popular at his time, so he might have easily lived for a week on the earnings of a day's work. He was besieged by dealers who came to him with a purse in one hand and a bottle in the other. Morland was just as scrupulous in his dealings, and if a picture started under contract with one dealer, it could easily be sold to another if he had money and possibly another bottle in his hand. In this way, quite a few of his pictures went onto the market, started by Morland and finished by another hand. John Hassel, Morland's biographer, said he once saw 12 copies from a small picture of Morland's in a dealer's shop with the original in the centre. So there was quite a brisk trade in creating these copies as well. He did marry. I can't imagine how well that went, but they were married for a while and he did separate at some point. But his extravagant, hard-drinking, hard-working lifestyle saw him in debt all the time. He had a long list of creditors chasing him around London, and as time went on, his debts increased and his creditors became more pressing. So he lived a bit of a hunted life, only able to escape from the bailiffs by his knowledge of London and the assistance of friends and dealers. He had many bolt holes and some favoured inns, which he had rooms prepared with materials and easels for him to paint in when he was on the run. And I think at once he was arrested because they thought he was forging banknotes as well, so they kind of cornered him, arrested him, and then they found out that he wasn't actually forging banknotes, so they gave him some money as compensation. So a very, I don't know what the word is, exciting or extravagant or just a little bit lawless. He had this great talent of painting and he just used it to make fast money and enjoy himself, and unfortunately he ended up in debtor's prison. He was eventually released, but his health was ruined and he'd lost the use of his left hand and he couldn't hold his palette, but he painted up until the end. It seems he was released again from debtor's prison, and then he was arrested again for a publican score, so that must have been a debt he had, and he died in a sponging house in Eyre Street, Coldbath Field, on the 27th of October 1804. His wife died 3 days afterwards, and both were buried together in the burial ground attached to St James's Chapel in the Hampstead Road. And there are some known 4,000 paintings attributed to him and many more copies circulating. So there's a good chance that this could be a George Morland. There's a good chance it could be after him. It could have been started by him and finished by somebody else, or it could be a copy. We will never know. There's no signature on there, but it's certainly of the time. It's certainly got the hallmarks in terms of the composition, the way he worked, and looking at those smaller paintings of his pot boilers, I can imagine he would have knocked 2 or 3 of those out just to get some beer money, shall we say. So there's no reason why this painting could not be an actual George Morland as well. But I mean, what a life. I think a lot of artists today would just be happy if they could sell their paintings. The only one I can think of similar to this lifestyle is Francis Bacon, and I know he used to sell his paintings or take his paintings to the Marlborough Gallery in London, and they would kind of give him some money to live on and go and enjoy himself. So yeah, he had a kind of similar extravagant lifestyle using painting to fund it. But yeah, so anyway, we are putting this little picture back together now. He is almost finished and I am excited to show you how he looks. Just a few more finishing touches to the back of the frame now. I like to put these cushions on the back just to stop it marking the wall. I've left on the original auction stickers as well. Customers like to have that provenance attached. The name on the left hand side, R. Beddington, I think he's just a previous owner. I have googled this and nothing comes up. And there's my label as well, so that's on there. And let's go and put it up and see how it looks. So as with a lot of these restorations, what comes in as a pretty straightforward clean, there is always some element of extra work in there or something unanticipated. But look at this now, the colours are fabulous, that crackler looks commensurate with age, there's nothing jarring there. I just love the action in here, it's just a gentle picture with a little bit of drama in there. His jacket looks a lot better now on him. You've got the figure in the background walking into the distance and that lovely sunset there over the hills. The colours of the sky have come through. The frame is brighter now, and it is a lovely, or shall I say mighty, little picture. I'm really pleased with it, and I hope the client will be too. Well guys, that's all we have time for this week. That was the mighty little Morland that I've got in. It was great to hear about his life, and I don't know whether I'd like to live that life. Maybe when I was a younger man it would be quite attractive, but just sounds really stressful. Being in debt and all that drinking and running around, it just seems a little bit chaotic for me. Maybe I'm just getting old. But yeah, it's a lovely little picture. It's very cute. Not everything that comes into the studio has to be like the Threadbare Signor or Shipwrecked. A lot of paintings are just in for a clean, but there is always some element of, I don't know, something to overcome. And with this one, unfortunately, those little pepper pots of old Damar varnish or whatever it is seem to be in the craquelure. They seem to be quite hard, so when it's been cleaned in the past, that's stayed there because somebody else had the same issue that I found, that it doesn't really want to remove very easily unless you get really aggressive, and as soon as you get aggressive you run the risk of damaging the rest of the painting or taking off too much paint from those peaks of that craquelure. So I think it's a good result. He looks a lot brighter, all the details still there, and it was nice to reveal his jacket. I think he looks like a much smarter chappy with his black jacket on there as well. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you to all my patrons. Thank you for supporting the channel. Everybody who's been on there will have seen the Threadbare Signor update. We found some more information on him and about the mark on the back of his frame. And someone the other day mentioned that it might be something to do with a cardinal's hat or something. So I've still got some more to dig out on the Threadbare Signor. But there's loads of exclusive stuff over there and tutorials. If you haven't been over there and want to support the channel, please get over there now and have a look. Other than that, my weather report for today, it's getting boring this. Sunny again, bright, sunshine. It's like summer's here, everything's slowing down out there. Everybody else is slowing down and I'm speeding up because the studio is super busy. Anyway, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Drop me a comment, send me a message on Patreon. Other than that, have a lovely weekend and I will catch up with you all very soon. All right, cheers guys, thank you.